why would making marks on a plain piece of paper like this enable you to produce jelly plate pulls like this? Well, I'm going to share all the information with you, so carry on watching and all will be revealed. In the last video I spoke about the various different paints and the properties they had, whether or not they were opaque, semi-transparent and transparent, and now what I'm going to do is just to have a look at those different paints and see what happens when I apply them to this paper. I've put a permanent black marker over it so I can paint over it with the paints that I'm going to use, and we can see whether or not they are the properties that it says on the various different tubes and containers. And it's an idea to keep this when you actually start to do your painting so that you can see whether or not it works with what you have in mind. I'm not going to add any water to the paint because this is really for people who are doing mixed media using gel plates, and so I'm not going to put any water with it because that will kind of devalue what we're trying to do here. So let's start off and go with the two transparent paints. One is golden green gold and the other one is PEBEO violet, oriental violet. Both say that they're transparent. So let's put a little bit of paint on here, just a tiny bit, we don't need much. And we're going to see how transparent it is. This is going to be an experiment for me as well because I don't know what's going to happen when we get the paints down. So I'm just going to paint over this black marker, and as you can see it really doesn't change anything at all. I think you can see straight away that that is very transparent. And now I'll try the oriental violet. Oops. Went a little bit sparingly on the paint there. Let's put a little bit more on. So both of those say that they're transparent, and I would probably agree with that. That seems to be okay. You can see the black line very clearly. So those two are transparent. So we'll put those to one side and we'll continue on now to having a look at semi-transparent. Now, if you're anything like me, you'll do this and then you won't be able to remember what the colours were. So I'm going to put golden, green, gold. And this one is PEBEO oriental violet. So moving on now, we'll try the semi-transparent. Just a little bit of paint. Again, not using any water with it. This is LIQUITEX magenta, well, medium magenta. This is LIQUITEX cadmium orange hue, both claiming to be semi-transparent. So this is the magenta to go on first. I don't know whether you can see that on this black line here there's just a small smearing of the paint. It just slightly obscures the black line there, but nonetheless it's certainly not opaque. It is semi-transparent, so quite happy with that description. And here we go now with the cadmium orange hue. And again, it's not obscuring the black line, but it's just dulling it down ever so slightly. So those are the two semi-transparent, and what I'll do now is I'll write the names down underneath, and then I'll come back in a second and we'll have a look at the opaque. I've written the names out here. I'm moving on to the opaque, and this one is Winsor & Newton Buff Titanium, and immediately you can see that that is going to obscure the black line almost completely. So I think that's a very good demonstration of what opaque means. This one is Amsterdam, and it's sky blue light. That pretty much obliterates the line as well. You can see the properties of those two there are certainly much different than what we've seen up to now. I think there's kind of a subtle difference between the semi-transparent and the transparent, but this is pretty obvious. And now we're going for LIQUITEX turquoise blue. I've tried to load the brush to about the same point on each pass of paint that I'm doing, and I would say that that one there, the LIQUITEX turquoise blue, has completely covered the thick black line there, and I would definitely say that they are opaque. So we'll move on now in a second. I'll put the names down, and what we'll do is have a look at the paints I showed you before on the other video and see what their properties are, because they don't tell you on the tubes. So I'll do that in a second. I understand for some people this is probably a wasted bit of paint and paper, but really when you're putting your images together, especially on the jelly plate, sometimes you can get really frustrated because you have in your mind what you want it to look like, and for whatever reason it never comes out like that. And I think on some occasions it's the fact that we're not laying the paint on in the correct order. And again, that's going to be a future demonstration that I'm going to do for you. But moving on, these are the paints that I can't see that there's very much in the way of information. This one here, the Dana Wheatley Ranger one, does say it's opaque, but we'll check that out. And this is a completely different colour. This is a pastel colour, but I'm curious to see how that turns out. These here are all kind of magentas, and you might want to use a magenta in your workflow and not know which one to go for. And as I've just said, if you put it in the wrong position when you're putting your paint onto the jelly plate, it could spoil the whole look. So let's see what happens here. This is REEVE's and it's Deep Madder. I'll put all these paints out so I'm not wasting your time with you watching me put them out, so I'll be back in a second. Okay, so I'm back now. We've got the Deep Madder, we've got the QUINACRIDONE Magenta, then the Fuchsia, and then the Cardinal Red. Okay, so let's see how they fare. So this is the Madder Deep. So that looks to me to be semi-transparent. I need to write down what these are that I've just used. So this one is Sky Blue Light. This one is Turquoise Blue. And that's LIQUITEX. This one is Amsterdam. And we've just used REEVE's, and this is Deep Madder. This is really stressful for me to do, write down, because I am dyslexic to a certain degree, and writing and spelling isn't my forte. So let's go for the QUINACRIDONE. So we've discovered there that the QUINACRIDONE LIQUITEX is definitely, well, it looks transparent. Here we go. Difficult for me to spell. QUINACRIDONE Magenta. And this is LIQUITEX. Now for the Dana Whately Acrylic Fuchsia. Now this says that it's yeah, it says that it's opaque. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's as opaque as these here, especially not this turquoise blue, but it's definitely not transparent, so it's probably somewhere between semi-transparent and opaque. So that's fuchsia, and it's going to put Ranger. And the last one is the Folk Art, and this is Cardinal Red. So that looks to be on the opaque side. and that's faux art. So those are the magentas, and depending on which one you actually chose to work with, you can get a completely different result, and hopefully you can see there the kind of result that you would probably get. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have a look at this one here and find out what this is Arts Studio acrylic paint pastel purple, which is rather a nice colour. Let's give it a bit of a shake. There we go. Now that is really, really surprising. That's really, really surprising. It's a lot more transparent than I thought it was going to be. Let's write that down. So it's Arts Studio and it's pastel purple. So there is the first trials that we've done, and I've got another idea for you which will take this a little bit further, and that will be in the next video. So I hope you'll join me to see where I take this next. So I look forward to seeing you again.